Hello my lovelies, I do hope you're well. Flem here, coming from my second channel, and I want to talk about Eisel quitting veganism. And he's not quitting being vegan, he's just quitting the vegan movement. And it seems to be because of a failure on his part, albeit through, I don't know how he frames it. It seems more so that it's a refusal on other people's part to work with him for whatever reason. You know, he talks a lot about how he's always just wanted at least 5 or 10 people who he can work with, collaborate with in real life, in real time, in order to make what he calls a positive difference in the world. And you know, I understand the frustration, and I just want to talk about this because you know, whatever you may think of him, whatever you may think of his conclusion, I think it does reign true for what the community is like. And a lot of the time there is a failure to kind of work together, set aside the differences in methods. And I was talking to Ask Yourself about this, actually. We were having a discussion about methods of activism, or methods of advocating for veganism, essentially. Because, you know, just because I mentioned him, like, Ask Yourself, for example, he doesn't do activism. He is just trying to formulate the logic in order to aid people with advocating for veganism. So he's taking the role of a teacher, essentially. But I was saying to him that you know, I'm very much, in the past, I very much was a person who would critique people's methods, and formulate that as if that were the truth. Formulate it rather that my feelings towards the actions were the truth. And that's something that Unnatural Vegan, for example, she does. She behaves as if, because she feels that thing isn't effective, it's bad. And I very much was guilty of that. I don't know if I am now. I don't think I am. I hope I'm not. But that's what I was saying to him. I was saying, you know, your method, for example, isn't one that I would agree with. I take the kind of nice person approach. But beforehand, I would have critiqued it. But now, really, I can't actually prove if it's not effective. It's just not effective for me and people of my personality type. But at the same time, I can say that it's not all I want, but it actually is. You know, that there are many different types of people in this world, and I'm not saying humour every single type, but just, you know, cater to all of them, because some types of people are just genuinely awful, and I'm talking like, you know, murderers and so like, you know, don't cater to them. But yeah, you can't prove that thing isn't actually ineffective unless you know, go out and study this, like, you know, formulate something that can measure whether or not it's effective. If you can't really demonstrate that it's not effective, then you can only really go by your feeling and inclination that it doesn't work. But my point is, because I've waffled, is that we do have a tendency to behave as if our feelings that something, or our concerns that something might not be effective, we use that as a conclusion rather than a hypothesis. So yeah, I think there's too much of that, and that gets in the way, ultimately, of collaborating. Eisel, for example, I've spoken to him. I speak to him on Facebook, and we keep in touch quite often. And he and I are very different people. We're very different. You can just tell from a kind of superficial standpoint that we're very different, and we have quite different methods, quite different ways of speaking to people, and quite different lifestyles. And sometimes he'll do things and say things that I don't agree with, and sometimes I do things that he might not think are very effective. But, you know, he has never, you know, like, he'll give me suggestions of what I should probably do, feedback, that sort of thing, but he's never told me, you ought to do this because this is trash and I refuse to speak to you and I refuse to work with you because I don't agree with this and I don't think it's effective. And I think there is too much of that. And because of that, we are failing to really come together and, you know, and this is just the case for everyone, like even people who want to collaborate. I think sometimes when they end up doing so, there is a clash, and it's just so much, and it's just like, well, how do we build a positive movement if we're so busy, like, just trashing each other? Like, there's an example of this. I don't want to, you know, because it's kind of secret tea. But this person essentially refused to come to an event and speak about their advocacy because someone else was going and they thought that they were like a fascist or an apologist for some political movement they didn't agree with. And I was just thinking, hang on. So they're refusing to advocate their message, which could potentially inspire people who might not even be part of their message and resonate with that they've given up that opportunity. They've given up that platform because of someone who has an opposing viewpoint to them. Like, isn't that like the opposite of what you want to do? Surely you would want to go on a platform and preach your message in order to reach as many people as possible. Why would you give that up? And that's, you know, even that is something that a lot of vegans, not a lot, rather a few vegans will do. But a lot of vegans will just not collaborate with anyone. They won't team up. And, you know, there's strength in numbers. And that's a problem I see with vegan YouTube, for example, is everyone is out for themselves. They have their own platforms. They don't really want to work with anybody else. There are a few people who are doing this, and you know, giving the shout out. And though it might think, oh, you're just kind of like begging for someone to find you through them, it's not even a case of that. It's a case of, you know, coming together, having that sense of community, because we call ourselves the vegan community, but sometimes there's kind of a lack of one, and I think it's a real shame. And Eisel, whatever you may think about him, he has definitely tried. He's reached out to even more people than I've reached out to, and I have a solid ideal that we should be collaborating with each other. We should be sharing other people's ideas, and I do believe that I do a lot of that on my channel. But even though he doesn't, you know, so much give people the shout out per se, he does behind the scenes really try to reach out to people, and for whatever reason there may be, people do turn him down or they don't want to work with him. And, you know, a criticism of Eisel is that he is, you know, he has high standards and that nothing will please him. So that's what he says in one recent video, that people do believe that he wouldn't be happy with anything. Now, he is a big critic. He will critique a lot, okay? He critiques far more than I personally would say is a good idea. But at the same time, I think that, you know, I can't really blame him. It's horrible to get the door shut on you, especially when you want to get into motion. If you have a lot of passion, you have a lot of knowledge and experience in a field, then you want to exert that. Like, you spend all that time learning about these things. The reason you learn about them is so that you can utilize them, and if you can't then utilize them, it feels like a waste of potential, which is, especially if you're someone who wants to make a positive difference in the world, an incredibly disheartening journey to venture. And it's just a real shame. What do I think really he should do? I think he should do what he needs to do. Whatever he thinks he'll be able to make a positive difference doing, he should 100% do, because that seems to be what drives him in a lot of the things that he does. You know, I don't personally agree with some of the things he says or the way he goes about things, but at the end of the day, he's got to do what he's got to do what he thinks will make a positive difference. And if he feels like there is a stagnation in the vegan movement, if he feels he's said all he needs to say, if he feels as if he's repeating himself, if he feels like there is nothing else to come of it, if you've exhausted all of your options, then what really do you have to do except move on? And I think that, like, you may think that I'm naive, and this may be true. I think, you know, I'm running on hope really more than a prediction of what will actually happen, because to be honest with you, YouTube is constantly falling down a well. It's just doing it very slowly. I don't know if the platform will improve. My thought is no, it's only going to get worse, because it does every single year. But I am of the viewpoint that the community will improve. It just takes people to wait it out, to really fight the fight for a very long time, because so many of the people in this movement have made it a challenge, i.e. they they have you know, engaged in absolute pseudoscience, like Sunfruit Dan with his turpentine nonsense. Like, that is, there's a mess that we need to clean up. It's not easy. It's not easy. And it really takes people who want to collaborate, who want to move past it, who want to interject some, I don't want to say common sense, but interject some, you know, more logical thinking. It takes people like that to really change the environment of vegan YouTube. And I believe, maybe out of naivety or hope, that it will positively change. And if it does, if I'm right, then I believe that Eisel will come back. But, and I don't believe he'll truly, like, this is my feeling, I don't think he truly will leave. I think he will see things and comment on them, because, you know, if you see a problem and you are someone who wants to make a difference, you can't help yourself. You just can't help yourself but comment on it. So I don't think he truly will leave. Not to say that I don't believe what he says and that he talks rubbish, I'm not saying that. But I think, you know, at the end of the day, if he really wants to make the positive difference, which he does, I believe, then I don't think he'll be able to help himself. I think he will comment on things. It's just he's been a critic of a few things in particular, i.e. DXE, and nothing has really come of it. And people are still responding to it incredibly negatively. And that, after a while, can be like, well, why am I even here? Why am I even talking about this? Because, you know, it's, nothing's coming of this. It feels like you're, you know, to adopt Peter's phrase, instead of flogging a dead horse, it feels as if you're feeding a fed horse. But, no. Yeah, you know, there are a lot of videos Eisel puts out that I don't agree with the message of. There are a lot of things he says that I don't necessarily agree with. But at the same time, there are a lot of videos of his that I thoroughly enjoy. A lot of, you know, knowledge I have obtained from his channel. So it is a shame to see that he likely will not talk about veganism anymore. And I do agree that the leaders in our movement are, well, not all of them, like there are a few who I really do enjoy and believe are making a positive difference in an optimal way. Because I'm not saying they're not making a positive difference, but I think it could be furthered, it could really be improved. But yeah, I do look at some of the leaders and I'm kind of confused. Like, why are you in charge? Like, who are you to talk about this? Like, but yeah, that can be frustrating, and I do understand that frustration, because I too do tend to feel that frustration, because within me is a boss. A bossy leader, whatever you want to call it. There is an inner voice that's very wants to take charge. There is. And so it frustrates me sometimes that I'm not. I don't know, it maybe comes from a place of jealousy for me. You know, I get jelly a lot. And then that can lead you to kind of feel hopeless about your own ventures, your own work. I don't know what Eisel was truly thinking. You know, I can't read his mind. But yeah, it is a shame. So many vegans I've really loved, I've really appreciated, you know, or not loved, but, you know, loved the work of, have left, and some absolute garbage ones have remained and just will not leave. And it's just a shame to see it's in that order and it's not the other way around. But I think what we can do, the only thing we really can do, is just stick it out, unless we have nothing else that we feel we can offer. But at the end of the day, at the same time, you still gotta do what you gotta do. So I don't know what you think. Let me know. Love to Eisel. And yeah, until next time, I'll see you soon.